Hi crafty friends, I've got a video for you today, making a bunch of cards using just one stamp set and its coordinating die. For those of you that are new to my channel, welcome. I'm Donna, an Australian currently living in Japan. The stamp set I'm using today is called Lanterns and it's from Pink & Main. I'm also going to use the matching dies. To start with, I've got out my trusty notebook and I'm just sketching a bunch of ideas. Some of the ideas use the lanterns as lanterns, but other ideas use just the flowers on their own. I jot down ideas for colour combinations, for what kind of media I'd like to use, whether it be watercolour or ink blending or some other technique. I don't always stick to what I write down, but it's good to have the ideas there. Once I've got a bunch of ideas, I get onto the stamping. And because this is a layered stamp set, I set it all up and do pretty much all of my lantern stamping at once. You can see that I've got the lanterns on one side and the flowers that go inside those lanterns on the other side of my MISTI, and I just stamp and move the paper backwards and forwards between the two, and everything lines up perfectly. The first card I'm showing here is a slimline card, and I've inked up the background using Altenews Pumpkin Pie and Orange Cream inks and Ripe Persimmon Distress ink. I'm using the Pink & Main Ergonomic Blender brush to do that. Once I've got that ink blended, I spatter the panel with water, which I mop up with a paper towel, and also with gold watercolour paint. I've attached these lanterns with string by using my knife to cut a little hole at the top of each lantern. Once I've done that, I've put some gold thread through each one, and once I have my arrangement worked out, I pop the lanterns onto my background card with foam tape and then stretch the strings up and attach them with a small piece of double-sided tape to the back of the panel. The sentiment for this card says, "You brighten my days," which I thought was excellent for lanterns, and it comes from the same stamp set. I've stamped that in Versamark Onyx Black ink, and I've embossed it with clear embossing powder so that it really stands out against the background. And here's the finished card. The next card also uses ink blending on the background. This time I wanted the background to look like the lanterns were glowing, and so I've chosen the same yellows and oranges for the centre of the card, but chipped sapphire and black soot for around the edges, so that the lanterns look like they're glowing against a night sky. The construction of this card was identical to the previous card. The only difference is that I embossed the sentiment in gold so that it would stand out against the black background. This next card has most of the action on the inside. I worked out first of all where I wanted that pink lantern to go, and then using the coordinating die, I cut that out from the front of my card. Using that placement as a guide, I then stuck two more lanterns to the inside of my card. To position the final pink lantern, I put some foam tape on the back, closed the card, and then stuck it directly into the hole that I'd made earlier with the coordinating die. I've got some pictures here for you of the front and of the inside of the card. This next card makes use of a background panel that I'd made earlier and had sitting in my craft room. It's been made with watercolour powders, which I spattered onto the paper and then sprayed with water. Once everything had spread into a design I liked, I used my heat gun to dry the panel. The lanterns have been stamped in red and the flowers embossed in gold. And then I used some thin washi tape, which I've threaded through the little holes, cut in the same way as the previous card, and then stuck it around and through to the back of my card. The sentiment panel for this card was cut using the die for the lantern that you can see on the side there that didn't make the cut for the card, and I've heat embossed that in gold. The lanterns were stuck down using foam tape once I had the position correct. Next we're going to move on to the cards that feature the flowers separate to the lanterns. For this next card, I've taken the flowers that are actually the centres and focal points of the lanterns and stamped them around, leaving a gap in the middle. This panel has been cut using a stitched rectangle die. I then blended in from the outside using Ripe Persimmon Distress ink. I used that same ink to stamp the sentiment. Once I had the sentiment stamped, I cut it out using the diamond-shaped lantern die. I then used my scissors to cut across the top of the die and make it symmetrical. I mounted this panel onto black and then carefully cut around that using scissors. The sentiments popped up with foam tape, and I repeated that black with a thin border on the background. This next card I actually tried a couple of different ways before I got it right. I initially stamped and heat embossed my repeat pattern of flowers first, and then put the watercolour over the top, but I didn't get a clean result. And so what you see here is the method that I went with in the end. I painted a rainbow of colours along the top of a piece of watercolour paper. Once that was done, I used my spray bottle to spritz the panel with a little bit of water, keeping it tilted so that the water would run down the page. When everything had run to an amount that I was happy with, I heat set that with my heat tool. I stamped the flowers evenly by placing the stamp in my MISTI stamping tool and then just moving my paper along exactly the same amount after each stamping. The sentiments stamped in black and cut out with a stitched border. For this next card, I've made my own patterned paper. Starting in the centre of the panel and using 3 different colours of ink, in this case Rose Apple from Simon Says Stamp and Altenew's Sun Kissed and Orange Cream, I've repeat stamped the pattern, trying as best as I could to not have the same colour next to itself. Once the panel was done, I cut it out with a stitched rectangle die, heat embossed the word Celebrate onto a piece of vellum and wrapped that around before popping the whole panel up onto a card with a piece of foam tape. For this next card, I've used one of the dies as my focal point. I used the long, thin lantern die, running it through my die cutter twice, and each time I ran it through my cutter, I reversed the direction of the die so that it cut off a nice straight edge at both ends. I then stamped some flowers onto 2 of those panels and the word Celebrate onto one of them, using the same colours that I've been using for my stamping in the last couple of cards. I made another ink blended background using the same 3 colours and spattered that with a Perfect Pearl solution. Then it was simply a matter of putting everything together with some foam tape. I placed the word Celebrate onto the card first in the centre and then worked out my spacing outwards from there. While you're watching me speed through this card, I just wanted to take a moment to marvel at what a fabulous thing learning is and to encourage you to try new things. This set of cards was one of the first that I videoed when I decided that I wanted to start a YouTube channel. And I actually edited the video and added a voiceover, but never got to publish it. And when I went back today to have a look at it, it was amazing how bad a job I'd done. It's amazing to see how much I'd learnt since then. I was able to cut 10 minutes out of the footage of me just screwing lids on things and just fiddling around. And I've since got a new microphone, and while it's not perfect, none of the original audio footage was usable. And so I'm wondering now, when I look back on this video as it goes to air this time, in even 3 more months' time, how much I will have learned and grown. And so it's just an encouragement that if you're thinking of starting something new, just start. I can see my improvement, even though I know there's a long way to go. And while I've been talking, we've moved on to the final card. For this card, I stamped the lantern and embossed it with white, and then I stamped and embossed the flowers in gold. I cut a white panel with a stitched rectangle die, stamped Let Your Light Shine and embossed that with gold, and then popped the lantern up with foam tape over a little bit of coiled metallic thread. A nice simple card to end the video. That's all for today's set of cards. If you're still here with me, congratulations on reaching the end. And I hope that you've been inspired to have a good look at your stamp sets and to see just how far you can stretch them. If you'd like to see more videos, mostly shorter than this, then don't forget to press the subscribe button. And if you've enjoyed seeing this creative process, then press the like button.